What is Rotary? We're a network of people like you. In fact, we're the original social network. More than 1 million of us live just about everywhere you can think of. And we mean everywhere. We get together to exchange ideas, grow our businesses, and make new friends. We volunteer to help our own communities or someone else's. We're right around the corner. Come join us. The name is Rotary. Rotary International. You're welcome.
Earlier, Lauren Monet will lead us with our invocation, followed by Phil Armstrong with the song and pledge, and then Bob Reed will introduce our visitors. So first, our invocation by Lauren Monet.
I will be reading an invocation written by District Governor Chris Offers. Let us take a moment to remember all the religions represented in the worldwide Rotary family. Let us recall that when we were invited to join Rotary, we were not asked if we were Protestant, Hindu, a Muslim, a Catholic, a person of Jewish faith, or Buddhist. We were not asked because all religions are welcome in the Rotary family. Please join me in a moment of reflection and thanks with these words. With our friends beside us and no person beneath us, with the bonds of Rotary between us and our worries behind us, with the goals before us and no task beyond us, with a thirst for knowledge and a dream for a polio-free world, we are thankful for our Rotary friends and the meal we have shared here today. Thank you.
Let us all sing about the land that we love today. God bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome our visitors and guests to Rotary Club 2500 District 6110, probably the most active club in the Rotary world. I will announce the visitor and the Rotary host, and if you would stand briefly after all have been introduced, we'll give you a round of applause. Chuck Jordan has with him Quentin Houck. Somewhere. Jamie Cox has Steve Turnbow. Steve's certainly no stranger, being a former member. Jerry McCart has with him a friend, Fred Ebihami, back there. And Tony Otto has his wife, Sandra, in the back. Okay. Visiting Rotarians today, Wayne Schwanet. Where are you, Wayne? There he is. And from Sand Springs, Clark Shackelford. Hi, Clark. That's it. Come back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and Lauren, Phil. It's great to start out our meeting so well. Hopefully it's not downhill from here. First, our Phones Out, Take Notes segment. We have some interesting programs coming up that I want you to know about so you can place them on your calendar and be sure to be there. First of all, next week, as I have been excitedly announcing for several weeks now, we'll have Sheryl Miller, who is the Langston University women's basketball coach and really one of the top American athletes ever. And as I have repeatedly said to you, she was named by Sports Illustrated as the greatest women's basketball player ever. She's the sister of Reggie Miller, and both of them are in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And as I have said before, rarely do we have someone of her notoriety, especially in the world of athletics, come to speak to us. And I hope that you will all be here, encourage your fellow Rotarians who are not here to try to be here next week and bring a guest. It'll be quite an event. And by the way, she is a veteran sportscaster as well, so she should be very comfortable behind the microphone. So we're excited to have her. We were originally scheduled to have on September 16th City Councilor G.T. Bynum to talk about water in the river. We're going to reschedule that because of the fact that the vote has been moved and the program is not quite fixed yet. We want him to be able to talk to us about something more definitive than what we have right now, so we're going to reschedule him in the spring. Stay tuned for an announcement of our speaker for the 16th. And just a couple of other to note, on October 14th, we'll have Peter Lane, who is the president and CEO of Fayetteville's expanding Walton Arts Center, and that should be an exciting program. We'll have more detail for you in the coming weeks about his topic and what his organization does. And another reminder, on October 21st, we'll have our annual Business Visitation Day. If you're thinking about volunteering to be a host, please let Barney James know so that we can get you on the list. And it's a great way for those of you who don't host to get to know your host and get to know other Rotarians in a little more intimate setting. It'll be at the same time of day, generally, although some of our hosts do offer different times than Wednesday at noon. And within the next 2 weeks, if you want to be a host, Barney needs to hear from you on that. And then a reminder, on October 28th, our speaker will be our Tulsa Public Schools Superintendent, Deborah Gist, who, in my view at least, has made great waves already here in Tulsa, and she's bringing a whole new vibe to that office, and we're excited to have her. So mark your calendars, plan to be there for all of these, and plan to bring guests to all of those meetings as well. A reminder of our committee meetings today: the Above and Beyond Committee will meet in room 234. The Club Foundation Development Committee will meet in room 232. The Membership Recruiting Committee will meet in the Beacon room. And by the way, we're off to a fantastic start. I cannot remember a better group of yearlings than we have right now. So let's capture that momentum. The Yearlings Committee will meet in room 233. And just to be certain everybody understands, that this committee meeting is for the Rotarians, the Blue Badge Rotarians, who are planning the year for the yearlings. You yearlings are not required to attend that committee. But I did ask Lauren and Joy for a little information. You may recall in my speech on July the 1st, I mentioned that one of our new changes will be to have yearling classes this year who will work together and graduate together to Blue Badge status, and they will also do a service project before they get their blue badges. And so those plans are shaping up. And the first Yearling University will be September 17th at the Rotary headquarters, and those who attend that meeting will be in a yearling class that will work together on a project. And then there will be another Yearling University on October 10th, and that will form a different yearling class who will work on, if they choose, a different service project. And keep your eyes and ears open for additional information on how we're planning these yearling classes. But again, this is an effort on our part to make the initial months and weeks of Rotary membership even more valuable, to cement some relationships, and to give the yearlings a greater sense of purpose that they have their own project to work on together. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to Joy Longmire or Lauren Monet about the yearling committee and the yearling classes. Time for us to take a minute to recognize today's sponsors. I would normally have Alicia do that, but she's not here today, at least not here in person. Today our sponsors are Doug Stewart with J.D. Young. You're going to have to work on that picture, Doug. Is Doug here? Is that you? If you can have the picture back from high school, then I'm going to get my picture. By the way, someone up here said high school. I just repeated. We are grateful, even though we did just make fun of you, Doug. Also, Elaine Moore-Jones, Joe Moore, Lynn Moore, and David Dopp of Moore Funeral Homes. We appreciate your sponsorship, and I remind you sponsors and also those of you who are not sponsors that the ongoing support of our sponsors allows us to continue our efforts to support the community and to make a difference. So we're very grateful for your sponsorship. And just a reminder to our members, think about doing business with your fellow Rotarians, and if you need a reason, look at the four-way test. So now we have a very important announcement from Hannibal Johnson, the chair of our new Diversity and Inclusion Committee and also chairman of the board this year. So Hannibal, come on up.
Thanks, President Jeff. The Rotary Club of Tulsa is a leader in community collaboration and community betterment. So I'm thrilled to serve as the chair of the newly minted Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Would the members of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee please stand and be recognized? Let's give them a round of applause. One hallmark of a leading 21st century organization is the recognition of human diversity and the celebration through inclusion of our shared humanity. We want to ensure that the Rotary Club of Tulsa welcomes all individuals who share the tenets of our four-way test. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? The things we don't share, our differences, make us a stronger, better organization. Embracing diversity and inclusion is the right thing to do. It's just that simple. But if you need another rationale, consider this. Our club cannot survive unless we take aggressive steps toward diversity and inclusion. It's a matter of demographics. Our embrace of diversity and inclusion, recognizing and valuing the rich experiences and worldviews of myriad individuals and groups, must go beyond mere words. We must recognize that living out our commitment requires ongoing vigilance and continuous effort. I want to take just a moment to clarify what we mean by diversity and inclusion. Diversity refers to the differences and similarities between and among individuals in the context of our shared humanity. For example, race, age, religion, ability status, sexual orientation, and a host of other dimensions of our identity. Inclusion suggests affirmative, proactive approaches to highlighting shared interests, respecting differences, and affording everyone the opportunity to reach his or her full potential. Diversity is. It exists all around us. Inclusion may or may not be. We choose whether to avail ourselves of the benefits born of diversity. We create a sense of inclusion as we develop and refine awareness, attitudes, knowledge, and skills around diversity. Now is the time. This is the place. We are the people. Let's move the needle on diversity and inclusion. So here are a few specific things we, the committee, with your help, will do to enhance diversity and inclusion in our club. We will incorporate diversity and inclusion into appropriate club governance documents and promotional materials like the bylaws, the website, and brochures. We will increase diversity and inclusion within our membership through recruitment and retention initiatives. We will create a more inclusive club climate by modeling diversity and inclusion-friendly values such as mutual respect and civility. We will enhance diversity among our club speakers. We will champion diversity and inclusion initiatives within Rotary at all levels, for example, by sharing experiences, ferreting out best practices, and attending conferences. We can't do this work alone. We're depending on each of you. So join us, won't you? With your active support, we will ensure that our club remains viable, vital, and vibrant for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannibal. I'm very honored that Hannibal agreed to be chairman of the board and agreed to chair that important committee, and I really urge each one of you to think about joining in this effort. Now we'd like to start another item that I talked about on July the 1st. You may remember that I indicated in my remarks on July the 1st that as part of our Rotary value proposition, we'll be highlighting this year the people who have graced our presence over the years, focusing on their accomplishments since we last saw them. Today is our first installment, and we'll be talking about Will Shields, who is a former Kansas City Chiefs football player and a 2005 IBA Award honoree. He was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame on Saturday, August the 8th. There you see a picture of him in his yellow Hall of Fame blazer. His Will to Succeed Foundation has literally helped thousands of people, primarily in the Kansas City area. In the Kansas City Chiefs website, Will's bio, the IBA Awards are even mentioned among the awards that Mr. Shields has received. And I'm going to read a little quote from the Kansas City Chiefs website. Shields and his wife, Cinia, were named the Philanthropists of the Year by the Kansas City Council on Philanthropy in 2005. Shields was also recognized nationally as the first NFL recipient of the Citizenship Through Sports Alliance Award in 1999, and he received the Henry P. Iba the Citizen Athlete Award in 2005. That's a quote from the Chiefs website. Most interesting to me about Will was his mention of his children in his NFL Hall of Fame acceptance speech. His daughter, Sanika, graduated from Drury University with a biology degree in 4 years and played basketball there. And now she will be joining the Danish national team to play for them because her mother is Danish. His son, Siobhan, is the first academic All-American in University of Nebraska basketball history. Last year, he was 9th in the Big Ten in scoring and 5th in free throw percentage, all while majoring in biological science and maintaining a GPA high enough to be named a first-team academic All-American. Will has remained married, he has raised great kids, he's had a Hall of Fame career, and is a great representative of the IBA Awards, and that's a lot for us to be proud of. On to other announcements. To support the district's medical supply network project, the International Projects Committee plans to place coin canisters beside the badge boxes out in the hallway on the first Wednesday of every month. Brenda Melancon asked that you place your pocket change in the canisters, and she will see that the money gets to MSNI. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Brenda. And now, as I mentioned earlier, we do not have the Sarge present, at least not in person, but she sent us one of her famous video messages. You may remember the last time her son recited the margarita recipe.
Fellow Rotarians, I'm sorry I can't be with you today. I'm home gearing up for college football. OSU has their first game tomorrow night, and we're so excited about it. We're also very excited that Tim and Barbara Knoll with Music Trust have donated 2 tickets to every home game, OSU and OU. So gracious. If it's not hard to tell, we're pretty big Cowboy fans around this town. Ava, what are you doing? That's the neighbor kid. I don't even know her. So Cowboy fans, big Cowboy fans around this house. We're very excited to get our hands on some of those tickets. Thank you to Tim and Barbara. Everybody be at Rotary next week to start bidding on tickets. I'll see you next week.
So in case it was a little windy for you to hear that, Tim and Barbara Knoll have donated tickets to both OU and OSU games this year, and Alicia will be auctioning those starting next week. So thank you, Alicia, and we're going to work on her audio skills. Which she will gladly do, I'm sure. So now it's my honor to be able to introduce our Rotarian of the Day, Hannibal Johnson, who you just heard from a few minutes ago. We're honored and pleased to have Hannibal so active in the club this year. Hannibal is an author, attorney, and consultant. He became a Rotarian in 2004. Hannibal's serving this year, as I indicated before, as the chairman of the board and also leads our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Please welcome our Rotarian of the Day, Hannibal Johnson.
Fellow Rotarians, it's my distinct pleasure and privilege to introduce an outstanding Tulsan. Sheryl Siddiqui is spokesperson for the Islamic Council of Oklahoma, Oklahoma's statewide council of mosque and Islamic organizations. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Oklahoma Center for Community and Justice and the Islamic Society of Tulsa. And she teaches fall semesters at Peace Academy, Tulsa's independent, fully accredited Islamic school. She previously served on the boards of Tulsa Partners, Inc., Language and Culture Bank, and the Council on American Islamic Relations, Oklahoma chapter. Sheryl hails from Massachusetts, where she graduated from Salem State College with a Bachelor of Science degree. She worked for 6 years as an ER nurse in New Jersey and Wisconsin. She and her husband, neonatologist Dr. Ali Siddiqui, are the proud parents of 3 married sons and have 5 grandchildren. Here in Tulsa, Sheryl has been a tireless volunteer, working primarily in the areas of education, First Amendment rights, domestic violence response, mental health, disaster mitigation, and interfaith understanding. Sheryl has received numerous honors and awards for her work. She's been recognized by organizations as diverse as Women in Communications, the American Red Cross, the Jewish Federation, OCCJ, the Oklahoma Journal-Record, the Governor's Office, and the Interfaith Alliance. And that's just a smattering of the accolades this remarkable Tulsan has received. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome a true servant leader and an amazing Tulsan, Sheryl Siddiqui.
Are we good? Can you hear me okay? Great. I did not get the welcome I expected. I found that you have tremendous hospitality. I was welcomed at every single table, and for that, I thank you. I also want to appreciate that the Downtown Rotary has now served Tulsa area for over 100 years. Kudos to you for that, and also for your dedication to education. As a past board chair of 2 different school boards, education is really important to me. Whenever a Muslim starts anything, either out loud or silently to themselves, they start by saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's Arabic, meaning, I begin in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, hoping God will guide me through it, make only good things happen from it. I'm not out to convert you. I just want you to know, when you're in the car with a Muslim and you watch them turn the key and their lips are moving, I want you to know what they're saying. How many of you know a Muslim other than me? Okay, put your hands down. How many of you know this person through school? How about through work? How about in the neighborhood? Super. How many through military service? For those of you in the service, I appreciate you and God bless you. So what I would ask you, I'm so glad that you know a Muslim other than me, that's wonderful, but I'm going to ask you, please do not brand all of Islam by the Muslim that you know. Our understanding is only God is perfect and the rest of us, well, we're human. We Muslim humans are tested and tempted and afflicted with all of the same attributes as the rest of humanity. In America, 22% of humans have a mental disorder at some point in their life, and 30% are affected by domestic violence. And I would love to tell you that Muslims are not, that we are exempt from this, but we're not. Now, let's see if we can get this to work here. There we go. So in my experience, we humans make decisions based on what we think we know. And I would like to say, if you watch local Fox News, I do too. If you're depending for your information about Islam on national Fox News, then probably you've been indoctrinated to an awful lot of things that have nothing to do with me and my fellow believers. So my hope is today that by the end of my presentation, you will have a cursory knowledge of Islam, enough to decide more accurately for yourself whether something you read or hear in the news is truly Islam-based or actually a criminal act by someone who is actually acting against my faith. I think it might be helpful if we talk about who Muslims are, what Islam teaches, and where there are some trusted resources once we leave the room. So today I'll call my talk The Criteria. I'm no scholar of Islam, and I won't pretend to be, but I'm an avid student and practitioner of Islam, and I've been vetted for years by our clergy and by other knowledgeable Muslims. I was trusted to be the spokesperson for the Islamic Society of Tulsa for more than 20 years, and now for the state's statewide Council of Mosques. My family came to Massachusetts before there was a United States of America back in 1640. But one of my Muslim friends says, Dr. Sandra Rana, some of you may know her, she says, yes, but Sheryl, my people met your people at the boat. We have, in the Tulsa area, over 40 countries represented in our Muslim community. We have at least 3 Native American tribes, Dr. Sandra Rana being a Potawatomi, as well as our African American community that very often identify themselves as indigenous Muslims, and then there's the Caucasians like me, who for the most part are converts. So who are the other Muslims? I've told you a little bit about Tulsa, but worldwide, in the news we seem to hear about Arabs and more Arabs and more Arabs, and yet 6/7 of the world's Muslims are not Arab speakers. They're not Arabs. They're coming from countries like Indonesia, the largest Muslim population in the world, India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, China, Uzbekistan, Russia, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and the list goes on. You may be more familiar with the Arab countries, Saudi, Kuwait, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, and so on. One of the big misunderstandings is, and I get these emails of people who feel threatened by what's going on in Europe. European Muslims are totally, no, I shouldn't say totally different, but are very different from American Muslims in how they got there. Muslims were allowed to go into Europe, the colonial powers of their countries, as servant class. And over the decades and centuries, many of them still feel ghettoized. They still feel deprived of opportunities. They still feel depressed. So you can imagine that they might be voicing how disgruntled they are. American Muslims, for those of them who were not born here like I am, they came to the US through our immigration system. They came as scholars or to become scholars, or they came as businessmen and women. And the US immigration system, for all its faults, truly has been pretty thorough about vetting them. Globally, in the news we hear if it bleeds, it leads. Okay, so what are the things that you might not have heard about Muslims? Well, how many of you have heard, and I'm going to ask for hands raised here, how many of you have heard that there are Muslim astronauts? 1 hand, 2 hands. Isn't that interesting? When they've logged over 1,000 days, over a dozen missions, there's even been a female Muslim astronaut, and yet we don't know anything about it. You may not also have heard that there are Muslim men who have climbed Mount Everest, and there are Muslim women who have topped Mount Everest. You may have heard of some of the Nobel Prize winners in sciences and peace prizes, and you probably watched Olympians from different countries. In the Tulsa area, who are the Muslims among us? A lot of you raised your hands. Well, some of you are already patients of my family, so I will speak about the medical profession first because, of course, I'm familiar with hospitals. Tulsa has, just of the ones I know of, we have at least 40 Muslim doctors, and among the doctors, just the ones that we know about, they're taking care of over 90,000 Tulsa patients. And those 90,000 patients reflect over 130,000 patient Muslim doctor visits. Muslims are educators, all the way from preschool up through the grad schools. Again, impacting thousands of Muslims. Muslims are engineers. They're all things computer related, and I depend on every one of them, and with all of them, I'm still lost. They're business owners, they're researchers, many patent holders, they're energy consultants, they work for the local and national governments. They're in the U.S. military, both active, and they're also civilian consultants. And they're volunteers, I would say, locally. We have our own food pantry at the mosque, and we serve over 100 people a month, as well as donating and working with the food bank, Nightlight Tulsa, Iron Gate, TMM, the Mayor's Police and Community Coalition, Mayor's Police and Community Coalition, OCCJ, and we volunteer and donate to all kinds of humanitarian causes. So now you're going to say, Sheryl, that's not fair. You can't have these enemies. There are enemies. Well, I'm going to tell you that we have shared enemies. Our shared enemies are ISIS. Anybody surprised? Al-Qaeda. Anybody surprised? Taliban. Boko Haram. And you're going to say to me, but they're all Muslims. You're one of them. No, we have nothing in common. What they're doing is against my religion. Chapter and verse, you pick a chapter, you pick the verse. What they're doing is against our religion. ISIS alone kills 7 Muslims for every person of any other faith that they kill. Al-Qaeda was no different. Taliban is no different. These groups, ISIS in particular, is a plague, kills anyone who resists. They kill the clergy that won't give the sermons that they want. They kill women who stand up to them. They kill men who stand up to them. And then they kill for the spectacle of it. In many places in the Quran, we're told how precious life is, that only God can take a life, except for treason, self-defense, and homicide, proven homicide. Muslims may not take life. The Quran says in one particular place, in chapter 5, verse 32, he who takes a life, it is as if he has taken the lives of all mankind. And he who takes a life, it is as if he has saved the lives of all mankind. So you can appreciate why when Muslims get the opportunity for education, they're going to go in the kind of a business where they might get to save a life. So let's talk now about what Islam teaches. In terms of beliefs, we believe and worship only one God, the one who we believe created us, sustains us, and the one to whom we expect to return. We believe that God has sent angels, created angels who do his work. We believe that God sent us prophets to show us a better way of living. We believe in the revelations that came through those prophets, including the inspiration behind the Torah, the Psalms, the Gospel, and the Quran. We believe that God alone is the master planner, and he's the only one who knows what's to come and what has truly happened in the past. And he is the judge on the day of judgment, and we do believe in heaven and hell. Our daily worship includes 5 daily prayers, fasting the daylight hours of the month of Ramadan, being charitable in all things, being hospitable, and going for Hajj at least once in our lifetime if we can physically and financially make this arduous journey. What are the things that are forbidden to us? Throughout the Quran, God tells us consistently he does not love the aggressors. He does not love us when we are oppressing. Abuse is forbidden to us, or we will answer for it. Intoxication is not the best of us. Big thing in Oklahoma was the discussion about Sharia. And man, we're talking about people who really had no chance to ask the questions they needed to ask, and for that I'm very sorry. Sharia, the word means the path to the water. What is water? Life. So Islamic law is about how do we sustain life? How do we protect life? But Sharia law is really a misnomer. There's no one canonized set of laws. You won't find any place where you can look up except through the study of Prophet Muhammad's life and teachings, the Holy Quran, and the prophets who came before him. Islamic law is a lot like American law. You know how you can do some things in Oklahoma, and if you do the same things in Arkansas, you might get a ticket or you'd be in jail, but we're all Americans? You see? Sharia is flexible like that, to suit the needs to protect the lives of the people in that area. One of the things that Sharia demands of us is that we live by the laws of the land where we live. I hear all the time people yelling at me, oh, you're here to take over. You're going to make Sharia happen here. You're going to, do this and that and this. And I'm thinking, where do you get this information? Have you never met a Muslim? And then I realized maybe they really haven't met a Muslim, or maybe they were afraid to have this conversation. There is nothing in Islam that makes me a bad American, and I'm a proud American. I'm one of the daughters of the American Revolution. I'm a proud American. There is nothing in American law that makes me a bad Muslim. Can you appreciate that? That both are about the marketplace of ideas, although we can look around the world and say, well, it's not over there, and it's not over there, and it's not over there, and I'll say, you're right. It's not being practiced according to chapter and verse over in other places. But then we look at America, and the majority of people in America are Christians, and not everything that happens here is Christian either. Right? We need to look in the mirror fairly. Some of the values that we teach our children and we expect from each other as Muslims is that everything we should do should reflect compassion, justice, and material conservation. And that really is the litmus test. If you get an email that says something, or somebody says something to you that Islam says this or that, think about it. If it doesn't reflect compassion, if it doesn't reflect justice, and if it doesn't reflect material conservation, then know that this is somebody who is telling you something that is against their faith. Some of the other values that we hold dear, honesty, integrity. We're not allowed to lie, except in a couple of situations. One is the white lie to bring people together, right? Honey, do these pants make me look fat? There's a greater good here. God knows. And another time where we're allowed to lie is if two people or two groups are at odds, and you can see this escalating. You are allowed to say to one something that the other group didn't say, like you might say that Group A really respects what Group B has done in this particular area, even though you've never heard them say it. Surely somebody in Group A really believes that. And you can say that to Group B, and to Group B you can say something about Group A. Do you see how you might bring people together? You know, in the Bible it says, blessed are the peacemakers. This is reminded to us throughout the teachings of Prophet Muhammad and his expertise in treaty making, and also through the words of God as we understand it in the Quran. So honesty, integrity, respect, service to our parents, respecting and loving our spouses and making sure that our home is their home, taking care of our children and raising them to be useful, kind, compassionate citizens, taking care of the elderly among us, taking care of the needy, being hospitable, as I mentioned. So one of the things that's forbidden in Islam is vigilantism. You know how the Bible says an eye for an eye? But there's more to it than that. In the Quran, it's the same thing. God says, you may take an eye for an eye, but it is better if you forgive. This eye for an eye reminds us that we cannot do more harm to somebody who has harmed us. Although if we can't resolve any other way, we can make sure they don't do it again. But we cannot go beyond that. But God reminds us that forgiveness is better. So capital punishment is one of those ways that we control vigilantism. So capital punishment is allowed in Islam where there's been a fair trial with appropriate reliable witnesses and appropriate proof. But what about terror cells? I see a terror cell as a vigilante. And we already know that it's illegal in Islam. It's forbidden in Islam. It's a major sin in Islam to take a life that is innocent. And so a terror cell to us, to Muslims in this country, these are the people we're going to report right away, and somebody who's got really extreme thinking probably is not going to feel so comfortable in our mosques. We've had a couple of experiences where somebody who was really, really moderate went really wildly extremist. And that person was Anwar al-Awlaki. You know, we all have books from him. He was one of the most moderate and progressive Muslim thinkers we could imagine. And then something happened to him, and man, he flipped. And the American government went after him. But I don't know which happened first. Did the American government go after him first and then he flipped? Or did he flip first and then the American government went after him? But there's no question. He became very extreme in his thinking and in the way that he preached to others. But somebody like that, for the most part, will not find a comfortable congregation that will put up with it. Another word that we, at this point, probably should introduce is that of jihad. The concept of jihad means to struggle. In the Quran, the holy word of God, whenever God uses this word, it is to struggle to be right with God. You know, it's like when you get that viral email. Do you Snopes check it, or do you just forward it to all your friends because it got you going and it'll get them going too? You know, that's the jihad. God knows what we're doing. Are we going to be right with God? Or are we going to, you know, trounce on somebody else's rights? When we're talking about holy war, the concept in Islam doesn't exist. But I mentioned to you that war is allowed in cases of oppression, and to relieve oppression and to bring people about people's rights if there's no other way. But a war can only be called by a legitimate, recognized ruler of a defined geopolitical area. So if our president, whatever president that might be of the United States of America, declared a war, my hope is that my representatives have ensured that the homework was done, that there's no other way to achieve what we need to achieve there. And then I would support our American president in going to war. Now, I have to ask you, did Osama bin Laden have the right to call for a jihad or a war? No. He was not the legitimate, recognized ruler of a defined geopolitical area. And this is the law from the time of Muhammad, now 1,400 years. So what are some of the reliable sources about Islam? There we go. So I would tell you, well, like I said, I love our local Fox guys, okay? Don't ever misunderstand me here. I think they're wonderful. But in terms of local scholarship, we have Imam John Ederer. He's our new clergy at the Islamic Society of Tulsa. He's a lot of things. Shy, indirect are not among the descriptions I would ever use for him. You have a question, he will answer you. Oklahoma is blessed with some phenomenal scholars, nationally recognized. Dr. Imam Imad Nchasi is not only the imam of one of the mosques in Oklahoma City, but he is also a professor out at OCU in the Department of Religion. Dr. Charles Kimball, we are in a Methodist church, a good Methodist, I must tell you. He's out at OU in the Department of Religion, and some of you might know him from University of Tulsa when he was teaching there. And Dr. Joshua Landis is out at OU Norman in the Department of Mideast Area Studies. So you may have questions for me later, and it may be that I'm going to refer you to the true experts. They're the ones who've done the research. They're the ones who follow the news in their specific areas, and truly they're qualified to answer. For those of you who like to go online like I do, you might find discoverislam.com, whyislam.org, and care.com helpful to you. In the news, we're all seeing the horror of Muslims killing other Muslims and murdering people of all faiths, as if killing was the way of life in Islam. However, what we seem to lose in this steady barrage of headlines is the reality that Muslims protected those very minorities over the last hundreds and over 1,000 years. Those minorities in their midst. And that's why the minorities are still there after all this time. So who are the real Muslims? Those who went in recently and wiped out populations and made huge numbers of people refugees, or the people who protected people of not only their own faith, but people of other faiths for centuries? As ISIS recently has decimated the precious historical landmarks of the ancient world, it is easy to miss the fact that Muslims protected these artifacts of people and of religions long ago. It's important. No, it's essential that we keep our perspective. So the Islamic Society of Tulsa is, like most mosques, open to the public. We give tours, we give presentations. Some years we top in the thousands of visitors. If you ever want to come and hear one of our sermons, you're more than welcome to come at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Just show up and tell them that you're looking for me, and we'll find you a translator. And we'll take you to a room where you can ask questions through the whole sermon without disturbing people in worship, but you can see the whole thing. If you want to come for a class every Wednesday night, like today is Wednesday, 7 o'clock in the mosque, Free, no registration required. Come in, bring your questions. This is not about indoctrination, it's about information. We have people who come who say, my daughter's going to marry a Muslim. What does that mean? Or I'm planning to go and do mission work in a Muslim country. What do I need to know? Or I read something in the news and you people just can't be that bad. So I invite you to join us. So by now, I'm hoping that you have some criteria to work with, that you know now, beyond the headlines, the majority of Muslims are trying to live the American dream. They want to provide for their families. They want to be parts of successful businesses in safe, thriving communities. They want to help their kids grow up to be independent and to give back to their communities. You know that politics is behind the atrocities that are reported in the headlines, and that Islam, like all other religions, can be distorted for selfish gain. But the majority of believers will condemn those acts. You know that you can call me, or if you still don't trust the words of a Muslim, you can call on Dr. Landis or Dr. Kimball, who last I heard were not Muslims, and they will give you well-researched, accurate information. We all, Muslims and all of our friends and community members, have to ask ourselves, are we smart enough to seek out the experts? Are we going to let political, religious, and media opportunists and extremists, ours and yours, speak for the masses and define our course? Are we smart enough to see the bell curve in every tradition? And can we desire to work with a like-minded people for a better world? I, for one, hope so. Thank you so much. Rumor has it you might have a question or two for me. Before we go there, but Lauren, thank you so much. Before we go there, I just want to tell you, on your table, if you didn't get one, there should be a pamphlet on women, because there's a lot of misinformation about that, among women who are Muslim and non-Muslim and others. There's a Discover Islam reader on your table. There's a concept of jihad. And also, if you would like to come to our Wednesday night class, I have the cards for the Wednesday night class up here on the front desk. And now, Lauren, thank you so much.
Your comment about the news media, if it bleeds, it leads. How do these sensationalistic news stories, how does that affect your daily life here in Tulsa?
The question was, I'm always the one in the back row saying, now what did they say? The question was, how do Muslims handle the news when, if it bleeds, it leads, and then it's a Muslim story? You know, how do we handle it? And the fact of the matter is, you think if you're not, if you're a person of other faith, you tend to get a little worried. We tend to get a little worried too. Number one, we're also afraid of what just happened, and we're afraid of what's going to happen to us because something happened, right? So for the most part, most Muslims in this community have a few people who support them. And after 9/11, I have to tell you, we had the most tremendous support. For those of you who have not heard the story, I love to share it because it was so awesome. At that time, I was working from home, and I had, who has 3 phone lines? I had 3 phone lines. The fax line became one of our phone lines, and my husband, being a doctor, needed his line, and all of them became phone lines for the mosque and for concerned people. And we ran media 24/7 for about 3 weeks from local and international media, but we also got the calls from local people asking how they could help, giving words of support, knowing that local Muslims were not the people who did this, and probably the people who did it weren't believing Muslims anyway. And I got to the point where I had legal pad after legal pad of all these calls, and yet the Muslims in Tulsa were terrified to leave their homes. The Islamic school was closed because up until then, we didn't even have locks on the doors. Most of the windows didn't shut. We didn't worry about security. But after 9/11, that became a crisis for us. They closed down the school, and the parents kept their kids at home, and for the most part, the women didn't go out either. So as I'm looking at all these legal pads of notes from people, well-wishers and supporters, I called up our teenagers and I said, I want you to put messages on poster board. And you know, we had a wall as big as the wall behind us, covered with the poster board of Oklahomans who called to give us words of support. And when people saw that, when the men came for prayer and they saw that, they went back to their wives and told them about this wall, because I knew that we were getting support, but the people in their homes didn't. We didn't have the internet then the way that we have the internet now. There was no Facebook. And so the word got back to the families and they started going back to work. But it was the most incredible experience because, you know, there was a woman who was handicapped who came to the mosque, our first Sunday school after 9/11, and she couldn't even get out of her chair. She was out of her car. She was so handicapped, but she called a family over and she said, I went shopping today because I was thinking that some of you wouldn't leave your homes, and if you would please deliver this to the people who need it, who can't leave their homes, I would so appreciate it. I mean, that just brought tears to our eyes. How moving is this? And we have dozens and dozens of stories like that, of people who either dropped by the mosque to sign on one of the posters or people who called and offered us help. So while we get this negative stuff, and it truly does get to us, and we do have people who leave the country because they can't take it anymore, for the most part, we're doing fine. We wouldn't mind if some of our legislators were a little more open-minded and educable and stuff like that, but I think that we have to make sure that we don't hang around with a lot of people who don't want to be confused by the facts. You know, I like facts. I like people who do their research. Yes, please.
I want to ask you about excommunication and reformation. Is there anything in the Islam religion where violent Muslims that are not obeying what you believe can be officially excommunicated? And is there anyone that's leading a peaceful movement to say, other religions have done it in the past, we call reformed or whatever you want to call it, so that you have a national way of saying we have nothing to do with Boko Haram, ISIS, or anyone else?
Thank you. Her question was, is there such a thing as excommunication in Islam? And don't I wish? Don't I wish? But we have had many campaigns among Muslims here and overseas, and I've seen the gatherings and rallies in Pakistan, I've seen them in Iran, I've seen them in so many countries, the Not in My Name campaigns, right? We in Islam are not allowed to divide by sect. God tells us that every mosque should have its own bell curve, and the bell curve should reflect that the people in the middle are listening to the people on both sides and bringing them back in the fold. But the people on the outsides of this, you know, there are all kinds of things we can be extreme as. We can be extreme in praying too much, or reading too much, or treating people badly, or marginalizing people. There are all kinds of good and bad ways that we can be extreme, but God tells us we're not allowed to be extreme. We're supposed to be the people of the middle path. So we're supposed to listen to the people out on the fringes, and we're supposed to try to bring them in. But we're listening to them because otherwise the people in the middle get stagnant. And so we're supposed to be vibrant communities. So this is a test for us. Having people out there doing things that are against our faith, but labeling themselves as if they are one of us. This is a true test. We do not have a pope, and people said, well, why don't you create one? Because we believe in God, and God said no. So it is what it is, and it's on every single Muslim to interact with the people around them and to respect others for who they are, and then work together on the things that we have in common, our common concerns. And safety is certainly one of them. That's why in Tulsa we always have Muslims on the Mayor's Police and Community Coalition. Right? We interact with the U.S. We just had the U.S. Attorney's Office at the mosque 2 Fridays ago. I think 6 or 8 people came from his department to speak to our weekly congregational prayer service. And we have people, you know, we deal with all law enforcement whenever necessary and a lot of times in between. So, yes, Matt.
Cheryl, I'm curious, would you mind asking anybody in the audience who's had interaction with you before today to stand up so we can get a feel of how many people in our club?
Oh, yeah. All right, he's asking everyone who's worked with me in the past, please stand up. Thank you so much. Jamie.
Since we're talking about diversity so much today, I know that you've been involved in a program called Open Tables that other people here might want to know about. Could you tell them a little bit about that?
Jamie is asking me to tell you a little about Open Tables, which has come to OCCJ as a phenomenal experience. For this, people of all faiths sign up in advance, and we are assigned a table. I had the privilege of sitting with Matt here for several weeks, and it's a potluck dinner. Everybody brings their favorite foods, and they write down the ingredients so that people of religions and food allergies and things like that, so that everybody knows what they're going to eat or not eat, as the case may be. And there's generally a discussion, a topic of the week. There's I think we do like several sessions a year. I think we're at right now 3 sessions a year. Yeah, 3 sessions a year. But the idea is that you're sitting with people of different faiths, generally to Muslims, to Catholics, to Protestants, to Jews, to Buddhists or Hindus, and it's really cool because you get to know them as people. You start talking about your kids and your work and your neighborhood and what's going on around town. It's a real human experience. And sometimes when we see each other as humans, we're able then to think twice when we hear something in the news. Now, wait a minute. He calls himself Jewish, and he's not like that, right? She calls herself Muslim. I can't imagine her ever agreeing to that. And then you've got somebody you can call, right? So, thank you, Jamie. Yep, love that program. It's a lot of fun. Yes, please.
I guess Muslim is the primary religion in the Middle East, but are there any other religions out there that you can talk about? I don't know anything about
Okay.
religions in the Middle East.
The question was, what are the religions of the Middle East? Well, certainly Christianity is still there in pretty big numbers. Different kinds of Christians as well, you know, Catholics and Orthodox and many others. Of course, there's bunches. Have I thought of this question lately? Anybody want to help me out with this one? So many of you spent time over there. Of course, many Jews, sure. Baha'i. In Jerusalem, what's the third big group in Jerusalem? So sorry. Just slipping my mind today. I'll get back to you. Yes, please.
My wife has worked with those at the Peace Academy. Would you tell us a little bit about Peace Academy?
Thank you so much. The question is to tell you a little bit about Peace Academy, our full-time Islamic school in Tulsa. This is an accredited school where Muslim kids, and sometimes we have non-Muslim kids, are taught by mostly Muslim, but also teachers of other faiths. The Oklahoma State curriculum, you know, math, science, English, history, government, all that good kind of stuff. Their foreign language is Arabic. Then they'll have classes in Islamic studies and studies in Quran, our holy scriptures. It is strict in some ways and some other ways so not strict at all. If you ever came to one of my students are so glad I'm here, okay? Let me just tell you, but they all wanted to come. They thought they deserved a field trip. I said, you get to watch the video. My class is a very lively class of kids from many different countries and different kinds of Muslims, Sunnis and Shias, and kids who don't say and we don't ask. But the idea is that they're in a class, they're in a school where, according to the kids, they don't have a drug problem. They don't have a discipline problem so much. That they're not allowed to berate their teachers or disrespect each other. And this is my 4th year or 5th year teaching there. And every single year, I'm amazed that who's ever going to be, I can pick out the valedictorian in advance, is the best friend and tutor to the student who's having the most trouble. This school consistently has merit scholars. In a class of 13, they had 3 merit finalists. These kids are working hard. In every single graduating class, we've had at least 1 and sometimes 2 or 3 kids who have memorized all 895 pages of the Quran in the Arabic language. You can appreciate if you can memorize like that in Arabic, that you can probably remember all of your other facts as well in all of your other classes. You know, once you build a neural pathway, you just practice a little bit and it stays there. So these kids are amazing. So the class that I teach, of course, they're involved in the geography bee and the spelling bee, and lots of them are on soccer teams outside. We don't have a big enough population to have a lot of our own teams. So the kids are generally on competitive teams or recreational teams outside. A lot of them work. I was surprised at how many of them work outside and still keep up their grades. I sure don't show any mercy, and I don't think the other teachers do. almost all of the kids score well enough on the ACT that they do concurrent enrollment at TCC in their senior year, and many of them in their junior year. So academically, they're really all-stars. As they've graduated, the alumni are really, really close, mostly professional, doctors and journalists and educators, and they just keep going in engineering. They're going in all kinds of different degrees. I'm still looking for the orthopedic doctor, and I tell anybody, if you just promise me you'll go into orthopedics, we'll work on your grade. But I haven't gotten one yet, so, my integrity is safe. But the kids are, so many of them coming from parents who know life in other places. These kids love the American system because their parents love the American system of government. They've seen other kinds of government. The parents, for the most part, are citizens as soon as they can be. So the kids, for the most part, if they're not born here, they become citizens very soon after their parents, if not at the same time. So the kids know that they're going to be involved in the system of voting. And we do teach them in my class. My class is public speaking and outreach. A lot of these kids, when they go off to college, they're going to be targets of people who have been, indoctrinated to hate them, to fear them, and people are going to act badly towards them. And so we try to get them ready. We try to get them ready, not with fists, but with the words and with the patience and the comfort of knowing that people act badly when they're afraid. And the Muslim kids should stick together enough that they should not be afraid, but they should also have friends of all backgrounds, and most of them already do before they ever leave the Islamic school. Yes, please.
What's the major difference between Sunni and Shia, and why is it so major that they're killing each other in different parts of the world?
The question was, what's the major difference between Sunnis and Shias, and why are they killing each other? Well, I was going to say they've learned from the Catholics and the Protestants, but I don't know, is that fair? Again, it's a political difference. Started out that when Prophet Muhammad was dying, he did not designate who his successor would be. And he was not only a prophet, head of a religion, but he was also head of state. And so after him, people understood very clearly that whoever followed him would not be a prophet, but they would be a political leader. And there were different traditions going on at the time, but the main one was that the leadership went through the bloodlines. And a lot of people, not a lot, a small contingent felt that it should have gone through the bloodlines. Prophet Muhammad's own sons died in infancy from diseases. But he did have a son-in-law who was also his cousin. And a lot of people felt that this very good man named Ali should have been his successor. But the majority felt that it should go to the person who's most capable. And so that man's name was Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr was the first caliph, the first political successor to Muhammad. And after Abu Bakr, then there was another and another, and these men were all consistently selected by the leadership of the areas around them. But there was this one faction still was very angry about Ali not being the leader, because nobody denied he was a good man. But a lot of people felt that he wasn't ready for the leadership, for taking on this diverse group of people yet. He became the fourth caliph, but by then the factions, like Republicans and Democrats, were already in place. And so over the years, we've seen that the Shiite Ali, the Shia or Shiite people, have some differences in their basic beliefs. I shouldn't say basic, in some of their beliefs from the Sunni, which is the majority, about 90% of world Muslims are Sunni. But what we see is, in most countries, Sunnis and Shias live next door to each other like most Catholics and Protestants. There are families who say you may not marry a person of the other sect. And from time to time, when there's something really to fight about, if somebody interjects this division, they'll play on race and everything else, and sects and religion is another one that people like to play. But there are so many families like mine. My husband and I are Sunni. We have a daughter-in-law who is Christian. We have a daughter-in-law who is Muslim Sunni like us, and we have a daughter-in-law who is Shia. And anybody bothers any of my daughters-in-law, you're going to have to face me. They're God's gift to me. My kids are also happy, but I'm telling you, God couldn't have given me better. And there are a lot of families, there's a lot of intermarrying, there's a lot of neighborly support, but when times are hard and somebody's going to interject something to cause hostility, they're going to go for that split. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheryl. I couldn't help thinking about the four-way test and how is it fair to all concerned is one element of our four-way test, and how our striving to be fair should also be striving to have knowledge, and you helped quench our thirst for knowledge today, and we appreciate that very much. Sheryl, thank you. A book recognizing today's program will be presented to our partner in education school, Celia Clinton Elementary. It's Malala, a brave girl from Pakistan, and Sheryl wrote a very nice note, hoping to encourage other girls just like Shalala, so thank you, Malala, so thank you for that. Thanks again to our volunteers who helped put the program together, and thank you all for attending. And remember today, when you go out and tell your friends, family, and colleagues about Rotary, tell them about Will Shields or tell them about Sheryl Siddiqui. We're adjourned.
Give the baton, leaves us polished stone.